Hi, I'm Joseph Newman. You've seen my life's work, and that's why you're watching this. Hope you were impressed with what you've seen, that you know I've been blessed with a very good mind. And I'm sitting down because I don't want to preach to you. I'd like to talk to you as a person with a brain, and you're willing to use that brain. And with that, let's go ahead and just pick it up. Now, truth is a beautiful thing that I've always devoted my life to. That's what you've seen and what you've seen in all that scientific work that I have done, is looking for truth. Well, the same thing is with me with the religion. I looked in every facet that I could, gathering information as a young man. For over 27 years, I didn't believe in nothing but me as a young man. From the time I was 20 years of age to I was 47, I didn't believe in nothing but me. That's why to the non-believer, I have a great compassion for you. And I'd like to give you some information that you can relate to. Truth is so beautiful that it stands independent of every human being upon this earth. That's why I've always chased it. Now, you can choose to benefit from it or not to do so. But one thing that's beautiful about the truth is you cannot change it, or nor can you alter it. It will always be the truth, no matter what you do. That's why I have always sought it above all else. A life is not worth living unless you so live it. Now, the thing that I'm certain of is that if you're an unbeliever, you felt kind of like a loner, because most people do believe in a supreme being in some manner or form. So you're a loner, and it takes guts to do that. But I want to compliment you. You're a people of that I can build an army that can help me get this truth out to biased and prejudiced people. John Lennon, who I think everybody knows who he was. He was a great writer and a singer of songs, and he wrote and sang the song Imagine. Now, it shows his frustration of traveling around the world, and he saw the different religions of the world teaching hatred and bigotry against one another. And he wrote that song, Imagine. And he said, and he was imagining there's no heaven and there's no hell. What he said is a fellowship of man. Now, he was doing it out of desperation, but he meant well. He was just saying the world should be peaceful, not warring and hatred and bigotry and biases and prejudice. There's a movie that I'd like y'all to look at. It's The Kingdom of Heaven. It's been put out just recently. Now, it kind of exemplifies what we're talking about. Now, this shows on the crusades of Christians going to Israel, and they're fighting Islamic people, each one trying to conquer Israel. Now, they're not trying to do it for the Jewish people, just for their own personal desires, biases, and prejudice. God said Israel was supposed to be formed for the Jewish people. But anyway, this film kind of exemplifies what we're talking about, and there's a group of people in this movie right here that exemplifies what we're talking about, who are trying to say Jerusalem is for all people, and they're trying to protect it. And so it's for the Islamic people as well as for the Christian people or Jewish people or anyone else. They were just a small group. Always, man is a bigot. Now, I can tell you, as a warrior, I would not worship any God that is a bigot if he don't have the mercy and the love when he sees a downtrodden human being that I feel in my heart, just like I feel it for an animal. If you're a good person, you feel it even for an animal, if you see it downtrodden. All my life, I knew that if there was a God, then he would have more mercy and more kindness and more goodness than I would ever have. And that's why I've always sought this. Now, I'm going to show y'all something that's going to dumbfound you. That I'll show you mathematical odds of over 105 million to 1 against accidental occurrence. That all 7 major religions of the earth have been formed by God. Now, you look at casinos, they make their money by the mathematics of probability. You look at insurance companies, they make their money by the mathematics of probability. You look at the U.S. government or anywhere in the world, they shoot rockets and etc. based on the mathematics of probability. When they shoot something up in outer space, again, it's the mathematics of probability. What's the odds that the weather's going to be right when they're going to try to come back and land? I've had experience in all of this. Now, my point to you, God has taken the mathematics of probability and given mathematical odds of over 105 million to 1 that he loves all people on the earth, that God is not a bigot. Now, probably what you would find interesting is, I think y'all respect what you've seen on my science. Let's go back to the time I was born. And I think you'll find my life interesting, is that not only has my life been an experience, it's been that and then some. I was born in the Great Depression, July the 2nd, 1936. Now, most people that's below 40 years of age, it's hard for you to realize what I'm talking about. But a good way for you to know it, I'd like you to see it for yourself. The Grapes of Wrath, and Henry Fonda played in this movie. But it shows how people really suffered back then. It's a movie worth y'all looking at. Get it and see it. It shows what the Depression was. Now, God had me born in it so I would see it. I was in our orphanage home here in Mobile, Alabama, where I'm filming this right now. I'm in Mobile. I was in an orphanage home down on Dolphin Street, close to Broad Street. And my mother was a very beautiful woman. And I had a miracle in my birth, that it is no accident, that I know now. I was 3 months in her womb on New Year's Eve, 1935. She was getting on a streetcar in Mobile, Alabama, and she got hit by a yellow cab whooping around that streetcar and hit her and knocked her 20-something feet through the air. And she had a brain concussion all the way around her skull, except about 4 inches in her forehead. Now, she was sent to the old Mobile Infirmary here in Mobile, and she was announced to be dead by 2 or 3 doctors. Now, they wanted to put her in the cooling room for the dead. Now, they couldn't do this without somebody's permission, and they had to contact her father, who was in Poplarville, Mississippi, and it took him like 3 or 4 hours to drive from there to Mobile before they could put her in the cooling room for the dead. They had to have him sign a paper. Now, he had to cross rivers, pulled by mules on a barge. Now, that's how backwards things were, and most of the roads were dirt. Now, he got there, and on the way, God spoke to him and said that she was not dead. So when he got to the Mobile Infirmary, he told the doctors, no, she's not dead, and you cannot put her in the cooling room. I don't care what you said, that God has told me she's not dead. And it was something like, I think 6 or 7 hours later, that the doctors finally got a heartbeat and breathing from her, and they were dumbfounded. Now, she awoke on the 14th day of January, 1936, saying she had died and gone to heaven, and that God had sent her back, saying that he was not ready for her yet. She had things to do. Now, she told a lot of people that, and she told me this when I was a boy, up until I was 14. Then I got frustrated because, just like any other healthy boy, I was interested in girls, and she was telling me I should be a preacher. And I got so frustrated one day, I screamed at her. I said, Mother, if you want to preach, I said, you preach. I'm not going to preach. And she was a smart woman. She never said another thing to me again about it. Now, she had won Miss Brooklyn after this accident had occurred. I'll show you a picture of her, and you'll see that she was a very beautiful woman. This was taken 7 years after she had had that terrible accident. And you can see that God blessed her. Now, she was the secretary and receptionist for the Journal of Brooklyn Air Force Base when this picture was taken, and she won Miss Brooklyn Air Force Base. Now, she wrote a letter before she died that this was a miracle that had occurred. Now, I want you all to read it very carefully. Can you read this?
Yes, difficult.
Okay. Let me ask you this. Can you read this to the public for me while I hold it up here?
It might be better if you just maybe went ahead and read it.
Okay. Well, I'll read what it says.
Hold on. Let's start from here. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, now I'm going to read this letter to you, and I'll hold it up too also. I want you to see that it's here. It says, "To whom it may concern, on New Year's Eve of December 31st, 1935, while attempting to get on the streetcar in Mobile, Alabama, I was hit by a yellow cab, knocked 25 feet through the air, and struck some hard object. It knocked 2 holes in the back of my head and cracked my skull almost totally around except for about a 4-inch space on my forehead. Remained unconscious. I was examined by 2 or 3 doctors at the old city hospital through the night, and the next day they had diagnosed I was dead and ordered my body to be sent to the cooling room, the room for the dead. My father, Jeremiah Ladner, arriving that day from Mississippi, strongly stated he had an inspiration from God that I was not going to be taken by God. It would not allow my body to be removed to the cooling room. Several hours later, the doctors detected life, but I remained unconscious for 14 days, awakening on January the 14th, 1936. And the first thing I saw was Dr. Arundel, the pastor of the old Dolphin Way Baptist Church, standing at the foot of my bed, praying to God to return me for my children's sake. On awaking, I knew I had died and gone to heaven, and remembered how beautiful the experience was. I also knew that God was not ready for me at that time and sent me back to earth. At the time I expressed that heavenly experience to several individuals who were close to me and have done so several times since. My son, known to the world as Joseph Wesley Newman, adopted name, was born that same year with the last name of Roberts, July the 2nd, 1936. Remarkably, without any brain damage or physical damage whatsoever, as I was 3 months pregnant with him when said above incident occurred. Everyone, including the doctors, had been concerned I would lose the baby, or if it lived, it would be badly deformed. I often told him about the same when he was growing up, and that God must have some very special purpose for him, such as a preacher. Disappointing to me, he never seemed to take me serious at all about that subject. I swear before God and man, I totally know all the stated above to be absolutely true. Signed, Agnes Marguerite Ladner Davis, born Marguerite Ladner, April the 19th, 1911. Now, she wrote this Sunday, December the 10th, 1989, just a few years before she died. Now, that was a miracle of that occurred. It shows God had a purpose for me, even in the energy technology and all that he's given me. But the thing I'd like even the unbeliever to relate to, my mother's expressing also to you, I didn't take her serious. I just pushed it out of my mind. I didn't have any desire to preach. And I was going to church and joined the Dolphin Way Baptist Church, and I know what I was taught as a boy. And in fact, it's interesting to me, I've seen this change in my lifetime, and I was born a Christian, but the Christians have betrayed Jesus Christ. They say he's God. He is not God. He is a prophet from God, just like he's told in Malachi. But anyway, I pushed on. Now, I've always used the mind that God has given me. Things have always been easy to me. School was easy to me. I never had to study. I could just pick up a book and read it, just like all you saw in that science. No man, no woman taught me that science that you saw, that no other person could ever do. God gave it to me. He gave me great knowledge, just like that unified mechanical field theory. No other sciences give you one mechanical explanation of the things I did, like gravity, electricity, magnetism, wave and particle theory of light, property of inertia. God gave me one simple mechanical explanation to explain all of them. That is no accident. That's a miracle from God, that he has a purpose for me, to serve humanity. Now always, like I told y'all, I believed in my being. I had mercy because I was in an orphanage home, and when I see downtrodden people, I feel great sympathy for them. And I get angry at whatever I think is causing that injustice upon them. I felt that all the days of my life, from the time I was in an orphanage home and got out. And I grew up very, very, very hard. My mother married, after this picture was taken, she married a guy who was a German here in Mobile, full-blooded German. He came from Germany when he was 14. Anyway, he was a tyrant to me. I worked from sunup to sundown, 7 days a week. When I was 14, I left home, started roughnecking on a well rig. I got this finger crushed, lifting a 125-pound pollen block all day long. It was crushed. And in fact, when I went to some doctors in New Orleans, they told me I could help people who were being wounded, at that time in war, and that it took about the same length of time before they get back behind the lines. And I'd have to, he said, now if I can, this finger was hanging by a piece of skin, and he told me I can just snip it off, sew it up, and you can leave. Or that if you want to take some punishment. He said, I'm going to try to save this. And he said, you could do a lot of help. So I told him to go ahead and do what he can. I said, if y'all can learn from it, do it. And I was there for about 3 months. And he was tickled pink because they did save this finger, and it was totally crushed. This bone was like ground meat. I could see it. I mean, it just looked like a hamburger meat. It had been stamped. This was a steel plate on top of a big wooden block. And I'd lift it like that and throw it up and catch a bar and catch it before it hit, just as it hit, and then bounce it back up again. And I got in a hurry, had about 4 feet, and I was in a hurry that afternoon to finish, and I caught it just before it hit. And that's how I did this. Now it shows you, even when I left home, my stepfather told my mother he hated to see me leave because I did the work of 4 black men. I had to clear new ground. I pulled stumps out of the ground this big around. I had to dig down 4 or 5 feet, and I designed a system to do it. I cut me a tree, and I'd put a lever to it, and I'd walk that tree around, and I could rip that whole tree out, and I'd pull it out, and he was amazed, and that's why I didn't even want him to know how I did it. That's why he said I did the work of 4 black men. Back to that time, they had black people do work that white men didn't want to do. And I want to show you all the justice of God. All people on earth are loved by God. The black people, this is something that I've observed. It's obvious to me you came from being white because you turn your hand over and look at your hand. All black people, you will see your palm of your hand is white, or at least tremendously lighter than the back of your hand. It shows me that you came, and it should show the world that you came from white people, just like the Bible says that you did. Now, there's a lot of people, especially in the South, who hated black people. I was always offended by that when I grew up. I had many black friends. People always told me who were black, Joe, you don't have any biases or prejudices, and they all liked me. Even guys, when I was in the service, told me that, and they had been in World War II. I was in the Korean War. They said they had shot some white guys who were captains and stuff, who were mean, white men who were mean to the black people. And I said, I don't blame them. If a man is not fit to be a leader and he's betraying his people, his men should shoot him. He's not worthy to be a leader of men if he's betraying them and using them like cattle or something. And they knew that I meant it. God is not a bigot. And he's put that feeling in me. I have a love for all people, and if they're good. Now, if they're bad, I don't love them for what they do, but I still would like for them to change. Because when I was a boy, in that orphanage home, right here in Mobile, I could steal you blind. I led boys who were, at the time I was 6 and 7, and I led boys who were 10 to, I'd say 14 years of age. And I'd steal a whole box of cigarettes. It was an old Brighton Wood drugstore down on Government Street in Broad. And I'd go in there and steal a whole box of cigarettes, not just a package of cigarettes in World War II. And I had learned that women like to be complimented. So when I'd go in, I'd walk up to a cashier, and I didn't care if she was overweight or what. I'd tell her how pretty she was. And they'd immediately pat me on the head and tell me what a sweet little boy I was. And I'd wait till they'd turn around and start waiting on somebody. And I'd be talking to them, just about journal things. And they just thought I was as cute as I could be. And I'd pick up a whole box of cigarettes and walk out. If I met someone coming in like a man, I'd say, good morning, sir, or good evening, sir. And I knew what the guy was thinking, that he was thinking I was buying these cigarettes for my dad. And I didn't have any fear. I just walked right on out with it. The guys would be behind that old Brightwood drugstore, a whole group of them, waiting on me, praising me when I would do this. And I didn't even smoke. I wasn't but 6 and 7. Those boys, as soon as they walked in the drugstore, this was in the Depression, they knew they didn't have any money. They'd ask them, what are y'all doing in here? Because they knew they didn't have any money. They never asked me that. God made it easy for me. Now, he used this experience for me to get my attention, because I had a brother who had raised me during the Depression. My mother said when I was born, he said, that's my baby, that's my baby. And when I was just a little baby on a baby bed, she said she got up one night and checked on me, and then she looked over at him, in his bed, and he wasn't there. And she looked all around frantically for him, and then she found him under my bed. He wanted to be close to me. Now, he was my mother and my father. I only saw my mother and father, kind of like you see an aunt or an uncle if you're a young person now, because they had to work 18 hours a day. I was asleep when they got home. I was asleep when they got up and went to work. Most people don't realize it, but back then people worked 18 hours a day. There wasn't any 5 day a week. It was 6 days. Everybody worked 6 days. I didn't hear about the possibility of working 5 day a week until I was about, 17 or 18. Now, it wasn't happening anywhere in the South. It was happening somewhere up on the North, the East Coast, that people were working a 5 day week, which sounded like a fairy tale to me. That's how hard in the kind of life that I grew up in. But it put steel inside of me. You go through so many experiences. Now, something happened with my brother that I know that God did, is that he was my mother and he was my father to me. And this is a picture of him that was taken just a few weeks before he drowned in Mobile Bay. Now, it's interesting to me that the Mobile Bay was originally named by the Spaniards when they first came and discovered this area. They named it the Bay of the Holy Spirits, or something to that effect. Now, my brother drowned on D-Day, June the 7th, 1944, in the Mobile Bay. The day that he drowned, the night before, there was a halo around the moon. The sun that day had a halo around it, and it was stated in the Mobile paper that the people believed it was a sign from God concerning the war in Europe, because the invasion had just started on June the 6th, and they were held on the beach for the whole first day. A lot of men were slaughtered. On the 7th day, it was just a total change. They came in just totally free and walked into France. It was the first day the Jewish people started being freed. My brother drowned on that day. Now, I know that I changed like you clicked a light switch. In fact, a girl asked me, who wrote me up in Life magazine, you saw me show you that in the science material. She made a statement to me. She said, Mr. Newman, she said, you're an unusual person. Who's taught you and influenced you to be the way you are? I said, well, it'll shock you. I said, it wasn't an adult, it was a child. Because my brother was as good as I was bad. And he'd always told me not to do the things I do, that God would punish me. Well, I didn't believe it. I thought God was too busy. There's a war going on. I thought about it and I said, well, God's too busy. And I believed in God, but I just thought he was too busy. There's people getting killed and slaughtered in Europe, by thousands and hundreds of thousands. And it just didn't seem logical to me that God was going to pay any attention to me. So I just do whatever I wanted to. Now, he was telling me that if I would do good things, I would have this good feeling come over me, and it sounded ridiculous. I just didn't believe it. Now, when he drowned, I cried for 2 years. I realized how much his love meant to me. I'd lay on my stomach and bawl for 2 years. My heart was broken. I didn't want to eat. I didn't want nothing. I didn't want no materialistic things. I didn't want to steal nothing. I didn't want to cuss. I didn't want to do any of the things I used to do. I changed like you clicked the light switch the day he drowned. And it's interesting. See, that wasn't out of hate, and it wasn't out of fear. I changed out of love. Now, that's a beautiful reason to change. Now, what really shocked me, I started helping people because I realized something. I'd never see my brother again unless I did some good things to make up for all the bad I had done. I used to steal whole boxes of Milky Ways and never get caught. And take them and give them, most of the stuff I'd steal, I'd give it away to the other boys at the home. And steal moon pies. Anything I wanted, I could steal it and never get caught. It was amazing. I know that God let me do that so that when my brother drowned, it would hit me so hard, because I have never chased a materialistic thing since that time. The technology that you've seen, I've been offered open-ended checks to sell it out. My life had been threatened. Power brokers had called me, and the first had said, Mr. Newman, we know you're dedicated. You name your price, we'll match it. I said, no, it's not for sale. You tell me how you get behind it and put it out at a reasonable price, and I'll be glad to sell it. Make a deal with you to produce it. And they said, let us think about it. Then after that, hell broke loose on me. They called me and threatened my life. Even a little woman out of New Orleans called me, and she said, Mr. Newman, I represent a group of people from Europe to America so powerful they can buy any government. They told me to tell you, if you don't sell this to them, if you go to any patent office in the world, you'll be shot going up the doorstep. And it put a rage in me. And I said, you tell them, I said, go straight to Hades. And she said, they won't understand that, somebody who has a death wish. I said, no, I don't have a death wish. But I said, I got a challenge for those men. You tell them, if they don't have something they're willing to give their life for, I don't care how much money they have, they don't have the life that a woman does who will give her life for her child. She said, I know you mean this, Mr. Newman. I don't know how these men will respond to you. Only God has kept me alive to this very day. And I'm going to show you some other stuff that's going to amaze you. But anyway, all my life, this guided me. Now, I went from, roughnecking on a well rig, moved around. I joined the service as soon as I was 18 years of age. This was during the Korean War when I joined it. It ended within 6 months after I had joined it. I joined in SAC, got into SAC, and I was sent to Puerto Rico for 2 years when I was 20 years of age. And it was there that I quit believing in God. I saw such a disparity between wealth and poverty. They had passed a law on the base. You could not pay people more than 50 cents an hour or you get court-martialed. And I just thought that was a crime because I saw how the people lived in a little thatched hutch, and they didn't have nothing to eat hardly. And I felt great compassion for them. And I used to take my money and go downtown in the square on Saturday night and get it in change, and I'd scatter it because they had a place where guys, GIs could come down and walk with girls in a square, and their mothers and fathers would sit on the bench and chaperone them, and they had to stay in that square. And I didn't even fool with it. I would take my change and scatter it for kids who was always piling around. And I'd scatter it so the big kids couldn't get it, and the little kids could scoot up in between their legs and get it faster than the big kids could. I had people come up to me saying, son, you're a very good person, but you can't feed all the hungry children here. I said, no, but maybe I can have an influence upon other people, because I knew people, rich people, were coming from Europe. They were coming from America, coming down there and partying and et cetera. I said, maybe I can touch their conscience. Then they had a hurricane when I was there, and 200 people got wiped off the end of an island. And they had it on the news like it was 200 pigs. And then all of a sudden, I just quit believing in God. And I went on a mountain and stood with my fist in the air at God. That I wanted to know, how come he wasn't angry? How come he wasn't angry at the disparity between wealth and poverty that I saw here? And I asked him to talk to me, and he didn't. And I stood there on that mountain thinking about it, and I said, then I don't believe in a God. I don't believe in nothing. But then as I looked into all those stars standing on that top of that mountain, and it was such a beautiful night, and the depth of the stars that I could see was so beautiful, it just came to me that somewhere out in all that universe, there's bound to be intelligent life. And I said, it's you I call to. Give me the wisdom, give me the knowledge that before I die, I can change all of this evil that I see here all over the earth. And that's what I want. And I'm sure that God looked down at me, and he knew if I'd stand before him, he knew I'd stand before men, and I have, with a ferocity. To me, death is easy. It's a way out, to giving up. It takes guts to stand and fight 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 for years for something you believe in, and that's what I've done for humanity. And God has put this fighting ability in me, and I needed it to do what I've had to do for humanity. Now, to the non-believers, my point to you is that during this time, I didn't believe from that time on. I'm telling you, I didn't believe in nothing but me. I closed my mind. Now, what was interesting, I came back and went to the University of Alabama, and I quit my junior year, but I still went to night school down here in Mobile, Alabama, and worked at Brooklyn Air Force Base at the same time. And I took economics and accounting, and I was in my junior year. And anyway, when I went in, I expected, naively, I thought, I'm going to be impressed. You know, I'm going to learn a lot. These people have lived before me. He's going to teach me a lot of knowledge. Well, I had the biggest shock of my life because I want to show you something. I used to teach economics, and what I saw was something. I could read fast, very fast. In second grade, I made 11th grade reading comprehension right here in Mobile, Alabama, at Yerby School. In fact, they didn't have 11 grades. I don't know what I would have made. But I went through an economics book, and these graphs were on different pages and different chapters, and I put them all together in this book, of the economics book I had at that time. They showed me, and I just came back from Puerto Rico and had quit believing in God. Well, I wanted to be inspired. I couldn't believe I lived in a world of such stupidity. That'd give you hope and slap you down with misery, give you hope and slap you down with misery, give you hope and slap you down with misery, give you hope and slap you down with misery. And this is the Great Depression, the one I was born in. Look at this depth of this black line. Massive unemployment, massive suffering and hurt. And God had me born in it. I could not believe I lived in a world of such stupidity. Gives you hope and slaps you down with misery. Gives you hope and slaps you down with misery, and graft it, and then keep repeating it. Now, me, stupid, would hit me immediately. Stupid is when you got facts in front of you and ignore it. And in fact, I stood up in class. My teacher was teaching what he had been told to say. His name was Mr. Cooper. And I stood up in the back of the class, and I said, Mr. Cooper, I want to accept what you're teaching. And it was, you have to see the scenario. Everybody else sat up on the front line. I've always been a loner. I sat in the very back, on the very back row, by myself. And I stood up telling the teacher, what you're teaching is wrong. It's a lie. It's not based on supply and demand. It's based on fear and greed. And I said, these graphs show it. And then I was fixing to walk out of the class. And Mr. Cooper told me, he said, Joe, why don't you get up and teach the class then? And I said, okay, I will. And I thought he was being smart at first. And I got up and started teaching what I believed. And I looked in the back of the room, and he was smiling. And it really stunned me, because I knew there stood a great man. I knew that he would have got fired if he'd have said what I was saying. But he could have, as a teacher, he could allow me to say it to the students. And I remember a girl came up to me one afternoon, and she told me, she said, you're a great teacher, but you got the wrong subject. And I said, no, heck, I don't have the wrong subject. I said, let me make it simple to you. I said, you're planning on getting married, aren't you? But she said, well, sure. I said, you planning on having kids, aren't you? She said, well, sure. I said, okay. How would you like, as soon as you get this and you start buying a house and you making the payments on it and you buy a car and you got your children and they're maybe they're from 2 to 3 years old or 5 or just starting to school, and then all of a sudden you're going to have a Great Depression just like this. And you're going to get fired, your husband's going to get fired, you're not going to have any food for your children. How do you like that scenario? She said, no, I don't want anything like that. I said, that's what I'm talking about. She said, oh. Now this kind of stuff is easy to me. I've seen it all my life. Thomas Jefferson warned, don't ever turn the Federal Reserve System. Let the banking system get hold of the Federal Reserve System. In 1913, the power brokers stole it from you, the people. Now, most of you people watching this by the name Federal Reserve, you think you own it. You don't own spit. Use your brain. The Federal Reserve is owned by something like 8 banks. You print the money. You do all the work. Give it to them. They give it back to you and then charge you interest on it. Now, is that a good deal? Or does that sound like lunacy? I want you to read this book right here, The Creature from Jekyll Island, a second look at the Federal Reserve. Now, it proves everything that I'm telling you. This is a conspiracy against the people. You have submitted to voluntary slavery in 1913. Now, what God has told me is that all this is going to change, and He's going to have me show you, if you do away with greed and fear, 2 things that God despises, I'll show you how this economic graph would be. This graph will be this. It'll always go up. There will never be an inflation. There'll never be a depression. And all you got to do is take 2 things out of the equation: fear and greed. And that's what you got over here. Fear and greed. The greed is when the inflation starts. the fear is when you see it fall. People get scared, and all along the line, all the companies get scared. The workers get scared. They quit buying, and it just plummets. People were jumping out of the windows in the Great Depression in 1929, committing suicide. People were rich the day before. People still have fear of that. Now God says it's going to happen again. The whole point of this is that Joseph Newman is not important, but this information is important to every human being upon this earth. The magnitude of my life, like I said, it's been an event and then some. The thing that I know is that there is a God, and I'm going to show you this mathematical odds of over 105 million to 1, and I'll show you how He gave it to me. Now, I went through life, and even through here in Mobile, and people would send preachers to me because they knew I was a good person, trying to convince me of God, and I'd immediately jump down their throat. And I'd tell them, I said, look, all you people are collecting money to build bigger and bigger buildings. That's all you care about. All you hear is, first time you go to church, the second time in a mile, give me more money, give me more money. We're going to build another building. And I can take you to people down here in Mobile and show you poor people that ain't got spit, and you're not helping them. I was in an orphanage home. Y'all didn't help me. And they'd start touching me. Joseph, nobody can help you but God. Nobody can help you but God. Now, I didn't try to convince other people there wasn't a God. Just that people who knew me knew I was a good human being, because I tried to help all people around me. And they would send a preacher to me because they were worried that I was going to hell. I didn't want people to push it on me, and I wasn't going to push it on them. Just don't bother me. Let me do my thing. That's what I wanted. But I want the non-believer to know I didn't come by what I'm saying now easy. No man has led me here. It took God Almighty to get me to say what I'm saying now. I fought this all my life. To give you an example, my mother, she told me this to the point I was 14. I told her, Mother, if you want to preach, you preach. I'm never going to preach. But not only after that, I went to Lumberton, Mississippi with some of my cousins from Louisiana. Went to Lumberton where I had some first cousins, and we went to a church there. In fact, I was talking with a friend of mine who was wanting to be a preacher, but he had told me that he had a concern because he was attracted to girls and didn't think he was worthy. And I had laughed, and just about that time, a guy called me over to him from the church, told me to come to him, and we were all taught to say sir or ma'am to someone who was your elder. And I said, yes, sir. He pointed me out of the crowd and said, you come here. And I said, yes, sir, what is it? And he said, God's told me to tell you something. And I said, what? He said, you're going to see the coming of God, and you're going to play a big part in it. And I just nonchalantly said, well, sir, I don't know how you could know this. And he did like people always did. He said, this is not up for discussion. God told me to tell you, and you've been told. And he turned and walked away. Well, I just turned and walked back to my friend and didn't even say anything. I just thought, well, the man couldn't know this, know nothing about this. I didn't pay it any mind, just like I didn't pay my mother any mind. Then I told my friend, I said, you of all people are worthy to be a preacher because anybody else would lie about it and then be a preacher. I said, you have a great concern. I said, God will find a girl for you, and you'll love her, and you'll stick with her, and she'll stick with you. He said, I never thought it about that way, Joseph. And he said, I appreciate you telling me. And he said, I will be that preacher. And I never saw him again, or I never saw that man again. Well, after I came back from Puerto Rico, I was getting discharged in Tampa, Florida. And with a friend of mine, I went to the fair. Well, we went to the fair, and I used to win teddy bears by throwing a ball. I mean, I could throw it like a bullet, and I always hit everything I was looking at. And people were dumbfounded. And in fact, I won a big teddy bear. A woman had saw me coming. She said, don't let him throw, don't let him throw. And another guy said, well, she saw all the people looking. He said, let him throw. And it usually was a quarter to throw, and it was $1 to throw for a big bear, big as me. And immediately I threw and knocked them balls down and bottles down just immediately. And he gave me the bear, and everybody else piled in there. The guy was smart, and the woman was dumb. But anyway, my point was I was very athletic, and I was very strong-willed. And I went to the fair thinking I was going to win some more bears, and I'd sell them to those guys there in the service for $5 a piece, and they'd send them to the girls back home, as a gift. saying they had won it. I didn't care what they said, as long as they paid me $5 because I didn't pay but a quarter for it. And but anyway, while I was there, I saw a fortune teller, and I said, "This has got to be garbage too. There's not a God, and this has got to be garbage." But I'm gonna go in there and see, because I'm an honest person. I'll always give somebody an opportunity to prove or disprove what they're saying. And I went in and sat down. The woman was a heavy-set woman sitting at the desk, and she told me to sit down across from her, and she told me to give her a hand. And she took my hand and pulled it over like that. And she looked at it for, I don't know, 10, 12 seconds or something, and got up and said, "Excuse me," and just walked out. And I sat there a minute, and I said, "Well, she's going to come back with a bunch of crap and say she wants some more money." But I wanted to hear her say it. So I sat there for a good 10 minutes or so. And then she came back and sat down very, very politely, and, like nothing hadn't happened. And she said, "You're going to have a wonderful life." I said, "What?" She said, "You're going to have a wonderful life." I said, "That's all?" She said, "Yes." I said, "Okay." Well, to me, that was total proof that this was a fraud, because I knew I could tell any fool that, and they'd think they got their money's worth. And so I got up totally satisfied. My money was well spent. There ain't a God, and these people don't know spit either. So I started out, and as I got to the door, and I pulled back a curtain, and there was a girl about my age there, and she fit what you've seen of a description of a gypsy to a T. Her eyes were on fire, and she was just yakking at me, just lickety split. "You're going to be a great man, and all people on earth are going to know who you are." And she was blocking my pathway out of this tent. And I just took my hand, because I was strong, and reached out and just politely pulled her back so I could get out. And she said, "You don't understand." She said, "That's my aunt. I've been with her since I was 5 years old." And she was in the back, rolling on the floor and crying and bawling. And she wouldn't tell us anything about except what I told you. And I didn't even answer. I just kept walking on out, and she kept following me. And she did say something that got my attention as truth. But a friend of mine was waiting on me. He heard her saying a lot of this stuff, and he said, "Joe, what's going on?" I said, "I don't know. These people are crazy." He said, "Joe, you ought to listen to them. They sound sincere." I said, "Sure, they're sincere. They're con people." But she said this statement to me. She said, "Look at you." She said, "Anybody else would be glad to hear what I'm having to say." And I said, "Well, I am not." And but it dawned on me she was right. They would. And I just kept right on walking. And then she got my attention, though, when she said, in a real pleading voice, and it touched me, she said, "At least tell me your name." And I stopped and turned around and said, "Why do you want to know?" And she said, "Because when it occurs," she said, "I want to know, what is your name?" So I told her, and then turned and walked away. And she got mad and shook a finger at me, real rigidly. She said, "One day you'll remember this." Well, I didn't ever remember it again, even when I started getting publicity worldwide on that energy invention in the 80s. And God started speaking to me in 1987, telling me to warn the world that he was going to punish the earth. Now, prior to doing this, and especially to the non-believer, I want to show you how God got my attention. No person could get me to believe in God, because I'd ask them questions they couldn't answer. And that's why I told you they'd touch me and say, "Nobody can help you but God." They could not stand my questions that I asked them about what they should be doing with this money instead of build big buildings. And I noticed that as a boy, when people were going to church, I'd hear women talking about how pretty do I look, how great do I look, and men, I look okay. They were talking about that stuff, and I didn't miss nothing when I was a kid. I didn't hear them talking about, "I'm going to praise God, and all he's done for us." That ain't what I heard them saying. It's always how good that I look. Well, that all stuck in my mind, that these people are not sincere. And it turned me off, because I had been evil for a long time, and then when my brother drowned, I was looking for the goodness I saw in my brother. Now, he was always talking about God to me, and that God would punish me, for doing the things I did, and I didn't believe him. But when he drowned, like I said, I cried for 2 years. I missed him so much, and I changed like you clicked the light switch. And material things, to this day, don't mean spit to me. The magnitude of this technology, I've been offered all kind of money. Anybody else would have accepted it. I turned it down, hundreds of millions of dollars. because it's too important for all humanity. You don't have the right, for money to betray humanity. Now, the thing else that happened to me was in 1977, I was working on the astronomy section of my book that you've seen, me show you about the Earth's true axis and magnetic axis. I had big pieces of paper all over the floor in my living room here in Mobile. And I was on my hands and knees one day working, and all of a sudden, all I could see was the number 14. I couldn't see anything else but the number 14. And I got up, saying to myself, my brain's tricked me, because I've been working on all these numbers. And as soon as I said that, the wall came back into focus again, and I could see the wall and the floor and everything else, and the 14 disappeared. So I checked my watch to see what time it was, and it was 2 o'clock. Just as I say this, it's 4 minutes to 2 right now as I'm talking to y'all. But anyway, God did a miracle on me. Was that I went right back to work and forgot about it. The next day, I had the same thing happen to me again. And I did the same thing, said my brain's tricked me again. All I could see was this number 14. And as soon as I said my brain's tricked me, it cleared up. I could see the floor and the wall and all my papers. And I said the same thing. The brain's tricked me again. I looked at my watch again. It was 2 o'clock. Then it dawned on me. In military time, that was 1,400 hours. So I had the girl I was married to at that time that was on that video you saw. Well, that song was saying, about what I had done by John Denver. It was her that I told to write it down. And I mean like clockwork for the next 7 years. Every major event in my life was tied to the number 14, like clockwork. Well, lo and behold, especially to you, the non-believer, I want you to see how stubborn I was. It took 50 major events, 50. I've still got them written down in these files over here. 50 major events over a 7-year period of time tied to that number 14. And it got so fast back to back. In 1984, I had to admit cause and effect. And there wasn't but one cause and effect that I could think of, and that was a God. Now, I knew at that time that God was real. And I had told Evan Sule, who's been behind me for a long time and was my PR man, still is, that God was real. And I told him about it, and we were on the 15th floor, but even when I was there, I met some people who was getting representing some people from California that said they was going to put some money behind me to help fight what the government was doing. And anyway, I said, you're talking about a lot of money. I said, let me tell you, money don't mean spit to me, but it does to y'all. I said, give me some earnest money. He said, what are you talking about? I said, give me $15,000. And he said, how about $14,000? Well, I immediately knew that was, again, God. And I said, okay, I'll take it. And he said, here's $2,000, and he gave me a $12,000 check. And I told Evan, I said, Evan, I now admit that God is real, and I know that he is real because of all these events. And I started telling him about it. Well, before I got home, he called and left me a message to call him. I called him. He said, Joe, in New Orleans, he said, they don't have a 13th floor. You weren't on the 15th floor. You were on the 14th floor because they're superstitious about it. They don't have a 13th floor in hotels in a lot of places in the South. Anyway, I knew that that was God's handprint. But he's shown me this is his handprint for all humanity. All 7 major religions are tied together by that same number of 14. If you look in Matthew, the 17th verse, it says, from Abraham to David is 14 generations. From David to carried into Babylon is 14 generations. From carried into Babylon to Jesus Christ is 14 generations. Well, when I read that, it was obvious to me. They didn't know what it meant because they didn't explain it. The 16th and 18th verse of the first chapter of Matthew is more coherently if you don't have that statement in there, because they don't explain the statement. Well, I wanted to know, what is 14 generations? I knew that every time man kills a lot of people, or a lot of people are killed, man documents it. I looked it up in Britannica Encyclopedia and saw that carried into Babylon was 600 years before Jesus Christ. So I knew by their numbers then, not my numbers, their numbers. 14 generations is 600 years. So then I look up Taoism, Confucianism, Hinduism, and Buddhism. You know when they were formed? Exactly 600 years before Jesus Christ. 14 generations. Now you look at Malachi. Malachi was the last prophet God sent to the Jewish people. Now notice something, that was 2,500 years ago. They have not received another prophet. Now when you're mad at someone, you don't talk to them. But 2,500 years, God has not talked to the Jewish people. There has not been another prophet. Now prior to that time, there were numerous prophets sent to them. Numerous times did God warn them. Now it shows that God was mad at them, and look what Malachi is, not but 4 chapters, and God tells them, he says, I'm angry at you, and I will take the Gentiles and the heathens, and they will know me better than you. Well, look how God did it. Malachi was 500 BC. Now you notice that's right at 600 years before Jesus Christ. Look how quick God did it. He did Taoism, Confucianism, Hinduism, Buddhism immediately. Then exactly 14 generations later, 600 years, he sends Jesus Christ to the Gentiles, just like he promised in Malachi. Now you look up the Islamic people, they're exactly 600 years after Jesus Christ, which is 14 generations. You look up the Jewish people, they're 14, they were told by God on the first day, the 14th day of the first month of the year for all eternity, you will celebrate this day concerning the Passover. All 7 major religions of the earth are tied together by God's handprint. The same number God gave me and made 50 major events occur in my life. He did it for all of humanity. Now to you, the non-believer, I'm trying to reach your heart as God reached mine by God's handprint. Now these numbers are not my numbers. God gave me the brain and the desire to find truth, and that's how I found this truth, and it's for you, the non-believer. All 7 major religions of the earth are ordained by God. John Lennon was trying to sing about the same thing, but he was trying to leave God out of it because he was seeing. Now to the non-believer, like I said, I've met many numerous scientific people in my life who do not believe in God, not because they're stupid, but because that they are very smart people and they're well read in the history of man, and they've seen the atrocious wars that all 7 major religions have done against each other. That's what this film shows you right here. If you go back and get it, it clearly shows you the evil that I'm talking about. Not only that, you saw the space device that I had. There's another movie I like you to get, The Day the Earth Stood Still. Now the Earth is an idiot. When you look out into the universe and you think that only on this Earth there's intelligent life. Now you got to be a total idiot to think that. You think God wastes his time and builds zillions and zillions and zillions squared of stars throughout the universe, and he puts life only on this Earth? You don't have a brain if you think that for an instant. Not only that, it shows you how pompous you are and how proud you are that you think you're so special that only on this filthy planet that we got here, that we've contaminated, does God put life. And it offends him, because the life that I see here now offends me. I've been offended all my life since God has shown me, since my brother drowned. Even when I didn't believe in God, I was still offended by what I saw, because I had been in an orphanage home. I knew how it was to be on the bottom. God had me born in a depression. He's put a fire in my soul to this very day for all humanity. My point about this is that God is real to the non-believer. You I have a great compassion for. I know you have turned against a belief in God because you've used your brain and you've seen the same kind of crud that these intelligent people have seen when they've studied history. Man teaches bigotry and bias and prejudice and hatred. That ain't what God is about. It's about love to the Gentiles. That's what Jesus was sent to you about, to teach you love. But yet you teach bias and prejudice and bigotry. And I hate what you do. It's a betrayal of Jesus Christ. And, I had a businessman give me a Bible. Told me, he said, Joseph, he said, you read the Bible and you know about God. Well, he said, especially the New Testament. Well, I started reading the New Testament, and as soon as I got into it, I saw conflicting statements. Now I immediately slammed the Bible down angrily. I said, this is bull. And I said, no, one place I don't expect to see contradictions that I expected in all the science books I've read. There's contradictions, but I've never say throw away the books that I read. There's truth in all of them. You just have to search through it and find it. The magnitude of this technology is going to change the world. But this information that I'm giving you is now coming together in a way that it's going to come across because God's going to bring it forward. But my point, especially to the non-believer, if you look at that space device, we're not worthy to take our hatred and go out in space to other solar systems, to other life. The first thing we'd want to do is to put them, make slaves out of them, or make war on them, or destroy them. Any other life we found anywhere else. Our history shows that's the first thing we'd do. We are not worthy until we change our attitude, a love for anything that has life, animals or anything else, to have a respect for it. And anywhere you go out into the universe and meet other intelligent life, you're supposed to have mercy and compassion and want to help them and not want to hurt them. That's the only way. Now, especially to the non-believer, because to you I have, like I said, a lot of feeling in my heart for you, because I know the guts it takes to walk alone, and you have walked alone. You can be an army for me. I want you to help me take these numbers that I show you, this is God's handprint, and you help me spread it to the rest of the world, to all these 7 major religions. They're supposed to love each other. It's supposed to be the kind of world that even John Lennon had sang about, and he was killed by someone because they didn't like what he said. Let me say this to people out there who thinks the devil is not real. You're just as wrong as you can be. Before God ever started speaking to me, I had the devil come to me. It was right here in Mobile, and I was still married to the girl that you saw in that video. One morning at about 5 o'clock, I had a dream-like vision, and I can remember it like it was yesterday. And I told you how much I hate evil, and I knew the devil had done it. And at the time, I didn't believe in the devil, and I didn't believe in God. I didn't believe in nothing but me. Now, I had a vision, dream of the devil. Now, he had the body of a man, but a face of an animal. And we were standing by a pond, and he was in front of me. And he told me mentally, if I would worship him, he'd give me the praise of the earth. And I didn't hesitate. I said, bow, 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 bow. And I just hit him just hard as I could. And even now, at 70 years of age, I can flatten out 3/8 inch steel when I punch a 100-pound punching bag. And you'll see it. I'll show you on the video of this. I still move 17,000 pounds in 15 minutes. The thing that most people, even when they work out, they don't even understand it. I invented the plastic covered barbells that's on the market. But God has given me all that I know, and just like people who work out, I see plenty of guys all muscled up, and in time of battle, you put them in a battle, that's like showed on this kingdom right here, where you had to fight all day, they'd get killed within 5 minutes, because what they practice is they make a lift and then they rest. And it shows me guys who work out don't understand what power is. Power is a force times the distance divided by time. And to put it simply, what that means is the longer it takes you, the less power to do the workout. The longer it takes you, the less power you used in doing it. Power is relative to time. The quicker you do it, the more power it took for you to do it. Just like people sit in awe when they see me move 17,000 pounds in 15 minutes, and you'll see me do it at 70 years of age. God has given me the strength, and I'll put it. You'll see it on this video. Now, again, my point of all this is the man, myself, is not important, but the information God has given me is important to every human being upon this earth. This is truth that God has shown me, and I didn't come by it easy. God had to guide me and put me through a lot, and then he taught me. Now, to the non-believer, as I hit this beast, bow, 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 he was just bouncing back and forth, and he was smiling at me the whole time, just like a rubber ball. And after a few moments, it was obvious, you can't hurt this thing. You got to outsmart him. And so I stopped, and then all of a sudden I saw something shining in the water by that little pond we were by. And I asked him to reach over and pick it up for me. When he bent over, I kicked him in it. And then I started running, and there was an embankment in front of me, like it was a railroad trestle or something. And I was going to run up that embankment, and he flew in front of me, and it put such a rage in me, it woke me up. Now, when I awoke, if you have ever been in a thick fog before, and I have, you can feel that fog. Well, this was a fog of pure evil. Now, keeping in mind, I didn't believe in God. I didn't believe in the devil. But when I experience something, I know something is hot when I touch it. I know something's cold when I touch it, because I always use my brain. I was in a fog of pure evil. And to show you how influential it was, I reached over and touched the girl that I was married to. And when I touched her at 5 in the morning, I said, "Are you okay?" Listen to her answer. She said, "I don't know. I think so." Now, if you're married, you try it on your wife at 5 o'clock in the morning. Reach over there and shake her and wake her up and ask her, "Is she okay?" Now, she'll fuss at you. "What are you doing waking me up?" But it was obvious to me. She was feeling that influence of this evilness that was throughout that room. But it wasn't directed at her. It was directed at me. Now, I got up, going from room to room with a flashlight. Now, anybody else, just like in this movie I'm going to point out to y'all, would be scared. I had no fear. Not a bit, I'm telling you. I felt a rage. I wanted war with the devil. I went from room to room looking for him with a flashlight. When I got to the washer dryer room where there was no windows, soon as I walked into that door, inside of it, the flashlight went out. Now, you would have ran, and you know you would have ran. The rage in me, I slammed the door behind me in the dark, telling mentally to the devil, "If you're man enough to kill me, if you're real, God is real, and then I'll kill you. But either way, I'm going to kill you." Now, I tore up that whole washroom trying to find the devil. And when I got to the water heater, I had to hit it and bend it in. And at that moment, all this evilness disappeared. Now, I wrote it down that it was either one of three things. That I had sent out a scientific document around the world to people, and a group of evil people had got together and concentrated their brain and sent me this evil thought, which I didn't think they had the power to do. Or number two, it came from another solar system, like a magnifying glass focuses sunlight, and it was an evil band that went across the earth, of evilness. And I said, well, if that's true, I'll see it on the news about somebody else experiencing some bad stuff. And I'll watch the news and the paper to see if I saw anything. And I didn't see anything. And then the third possibility that I saw, I said, the different religions of the world say that there is a devil and there's a God. And that devil seems the most plausible. Now, it's interesting that recently another movie come out. Now, if you're an evil person, I want you to see The Exorcism. This is based on a true story that's documented with the people's names and stuff in it. And it's a good movie. Now, it'll scare the average person, I'm sure. But you need to be scared. You need to be aware. There's an old saying, if you don't know your enemy, you're defeated. Every military man knows what I'm talking about. If you want to beat your enemy, you better know him. You better know every method that he can come at you with. And that's the devil. He comes at you, he doesn't come straight on. He's sneaky and sleeky the way he does stuff. Just like he came to me, offered me, praise and etc. That if I just praise him, he'd give me the praise of the earth. The point that I know to all people is there is a God and there is a devil. Now, you can choose in between it, just like I was hell-bent on going to hell when I was little until my brother drowned on D-Day, June the 7th, 1944, and that wasn't any accident. That's the first day the Jewish people got done. Now, the Christians, you have betrayed Jesus Christ. Now, I have the right to tell you this, not because I'm angry at you, because I care. I was raised as a Christian. Now, just like I've seen it change when I was a boy, because I've got a good memory, and you should know I do. I was taught Jesus Christ was the Son of God. Now, you're being taught that Jesus Christ is God. Now, that's a blatant lie brewed by the devil. Now, Jesus Christ did not give anyone the right to write the New Testament. He does not give anyone the direction. Read the Bible for yourself, just like I can show you conflicting statements in it. The first time that this friend of mine, who is a businessman, told me to get a Bible, and I believe in God. Well, as soon as I opened it up, I got angry. Now, that day I slammed the Bible down. God spoke to me mentally in a stern voice, get up and do what you do best. And I knew what he wanted me to do. I went to the library I had in Mobile with books on everything. I had purchased over $3,000 worth of books in my life. That's how I know all this material. God had me do it. And I had books on every country in the world and every religion in the world. And I looked up all the other religions. And I saw a continuity. That none of them say you can go to your neighbor, kill the man, rape the woman, and take their children and put them in slavery. They all say you'll be punished if you do this. I saw the continuity of goodness between all 7 major religions. That's the hand of God. That's the kind of God I'll worship. I don't worship no bigot God, nor would I. If there was a God who was a bigot, I would not worship him. I can tell you, and I can tell any bigot God, I would not worship him. I expect a God to have more mercy than me. And God puts a fire in me. I know that he's tremendously more merciful than me because reincarnation is true. I know it is true. I know I've lived before. I've said that since I was a boy. I don't belong here on this earth. I belong back at another time. I belong back at this time. All my life, I had this strong feeling that I didn't belong here. Now, the word déjà vu, which is coined by the French people, there's enough people that had the experience, and if you've lived any length of time, if you're 30 or 40 years old, I know that you've experienced it yourself. Sometimes you have been in some place that you had never been here before on earth, but you knew the circumstances when you walked in it. It seemed familiar to you because you had experienced the same kind of thing beforehand. That's reincarnation. And in fact, there was a documentary I saw when I was down there in Florida on a major show. Talking about a little old boy. He was 2 years old, and he was waking up screaming and hollering that he was burning, and his mother was frantically trying to console him. And he kept doing this night after night after night after night. And then he started naming the ship that he was on, naming the ship in World War II, and naming the kind of plane, and stating what his name was, in another life. And at that point, his father, who was a Christian there in Mississippi, he started looking up the data, and then they found it, that exact name of the ship that he said he was an aircraft carrier that he was on, and the exact plane that's not even made anymore of a World War II plane that he was on with his name listed as one of the pilots who was shot down and burnt flying down invasion of Germany. Now the people on the documentary said if you don't believe in reincarnation, you may well change your mind after you see this tape you're fixing to see. That was his comment before he showed it. Now this is obvious that this is true. Now what I'm saying even to the non-believer, see, it shows me I don't give a spit about what it is. I have a first cousin, Diane Ladd, who's been a movie star. And she had called me once when I was getting all this publicity and told me to endorse reincarnation of another movie star who had written a book on reincarnation. And I told her, I said, it don't mean anything. I said, I don't think it means anything. It's what you do now. And that's my whole point. She got mad at me because I wouldn't come out. I said, no, all I see is people want to go to Europe and they want to go every place else and see where they were born and all that crap. I said, that don't mean spit. I said, I don't think it makes any difference. It's what are you doing now? It's obvious you didn't get it right. Now what it shows me, though, to the non-believer and even to the believer, is the mercy God has. Because if it was me, I know me. I'd give you one lifetime, that'd be it. Now if you're honest with yourself, that's what you'd give me. You'd give me one lifetime to get it right. And if I didn't get it right, you say that's it. You're going to be judged. Now notice God, if he gives us many lifetimes to learn by experiences, and you carry some of that information forward, that's why when you walk up to a situation that you feel uncomfortable with it, even before you get to it, you sense, I know where this is going, but you've never been there before. But you were in another life, and you know that you recognize the circumstances. It may be the environment may have changed, but the circumstances are still the same. That's the magnitude of the love that God has. Now that's why I love God all the more. And I'd like you to love him all the more. That he may have given us 100 chances. But even if he gives us just 2, that's still more than I would have given. If he's given me 10 or 100, that's phenomenally more than I would have given, or you would have given. It shows God is very loving to give us a chance over and over and over to get it right, to finally to learn some information and carry it forward. Now, there's another thing I read on reincarnation that I know is true. Most of the time it happens is with kids below 2 years of age. You know why that is? It's simple. Use your brain. They've had no personal experience in life that's dramatic by the time they're 2. A child who is 2 is, is cuddled and babied and, kept in this little immediate environment. It don't experience anything on its own, so its memories are back in this past life that are very shocking, and this small child will remember it vividly. And if you read a book on reincarnation, you will see that around the world, that's when most children will speak up and say these things. When they're 2 or 3 and below, they start saying this stuff. And that's simple because they remember those strong experiences that they've had in another life, and it carries forward with them. Now, once they start living and experiencing things on their own, they forget them because these other things happening in their life become dominant. You talk with any psychiatrist and he'll tell you what I'm saying, it makes sense. It's the way the brain works. But my whole point of even talking about this is my respect and love for God that I'd like to show even the non-believer, that he gives us many chances to get it right. And if you're an evil person and been doing evil, I know what you feel, same as I did. You're excited whenever you're doing it because it's a challenge about whatever you're stealing or whatever you're up to. But notice something, once you do it, you don't give a spit about it. Neither did I. In fact, it's a dead feeling. Now, I noticed that when my brother drowned and I started doing good things for people, that's what really dumbfounded me. Once I did the chores, what I was doing, carrying groceries or whatever, for people and not taking any money for it, I noticed that when I finished, all of a sudden, this beautiful, peaceful feeling would come over me. Now, it made me just bawl on my stomach, laying on the ground to my brother, that he had been trying to tell me this before he drowned and I wouldn't listen, and that God took him to teach me this, is what I felt. And it made me feel guilty, that he had to die to get me to see this. And he's still strong in my heart to this very day. But he taught me a lot. That's why even in Life magazine, she wrote it up about him. September 1986. You pull up that at the library and see that she wrote about him because she was amazed that a child could have such an effect upon me. And she was moved by it. Now, the whole point of all this is, let me make it simple. Jesus Christ is not God. Now, you can see this very simply. Look up the facts. I want everybody to use their brain. Jesus Christ was a prophet sent by God exactly as he said in Malachi to the Gentiles. Prior to that time, the Gentiles didn't know spit about God. They'd heard about the Jewish people, but they didn't participate. Jewish people wouldn't even eat with them. Jewish people have not obeyed God either, so I'll talk about them in just a minute. But to the Gentiles, of which I was born, let me show you the truth. Jesus Christ was willing to give his life on the cross and suffer so that you would know God. Now, it's foolish for you to think all you got to do is believe in Jesus Christ. Preachers tell you that today, which is a blatant lie, and you'll be saved. Jesus did not say that at all. Jesus said 3 things. Even the devil came to him 3 times and tried to get him to betray God. He said, no, I won't worship you. He says, I'll worship God. And he referred to the Old Testament of our Bible, which we call the Old Testament, but it's not. It's the Testament of God. He referred to that and said, I'll do as God says and I'll worship God. Now, the devil believed in Jesus Christ. You think he's going to be saved? No. He's in hell and he's going to stay in hell. Now, it's obvious. He believed in Jesus Christ or he wouldn't have offered him all this. Now, notice something. Jesus says, why say I'm good? It's not but one good, my Father, he sends me. He says, the work I do are not of me, but my Father, he sends me. He says, anyone who praises himself is not of God. anyone who praises God is of God and can do no wrong. Now you find those statements from Jesus in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And in John. But notice something. Only in John, in chapter 14, verse 6, do you find the statement that only through me can you be saved. Now notice something. That is a conflicting statement to the statement given by Jesus in Matthew, Mark, and Luke that says, and in John, he says the same thing. Anyone who praises himself is not of God. That's the essence of what he's talking about. Anyone who praises God is of God and can do no wrong. Now that clearly shows you. Now use your brain. God gave it to you. Why do you think God gives us a brain if he doesn't want us to use it? He does want us to use it. Now I don't want you to blindly follow me. Look it up for yourself. I don't misquote anything to you. God has had me give you the truth. You're supposed to worship God. You do not worship Jesus. Jesus did not want you to worship him. That statement that was put in there, that only through me can you be saved, is of the devil. Now notice something. The devil's smart. He knew he could say it one time, and man would gobble it up, just like a fish grabs up a hook with a worm on it, and he get gut hooked, and he's caught. Now that leads you away from God. Now what you're doing is not doing anything. You're not doing anything new. You want to worship a man. Now the proof of what I'm saying that it wasn't taught when I was a boy, a ruler had the 10 Commandments on it when I was a boy. The 10 Commandments when I was a boy. Now you don't find no rulers with that on it anymore, because they teach that Jesus, all you got to do is believe in Jesus Christ and you're saved. Well, if that's true, then the devil's saved. Now if you have a brain, you know the devil's not saved. God tells you he's not saved. He also tells you that you will worship him and him only. Let me just read God's word to you, and I'm not taking anything out of context. What I'm doing is quoting from the same Bible that Jesus quoted to the devil. And from the book of Isaiah, chapter 43, verse 10. And understand that I am he. Before me there was no God formed. Neither shall there be after me. Now what do you think God's telling you? Neither shall there be after me. Chapter 43, verse 11. Even I am the Lord, and beside me there is no Savior. Now what is he telling you? Besides me there is no Savior. Chapter 44 and verse 6. I am the first and I am the last, and besides me there is no God. Chapter 44 verse 8. Is there a God besides me? Yea, there is no God. I know not any. Chapter 45 verse 5. I am the Lord, and there is none else. There is no God beside me. Chapter 45 verse 6. That they may know from the rising of the sun and from the west that there is none besides me. I am the Lord, and there is none else. What do you think he means when he tells you there's none else? I know what it means. I'm not an idiot. Now, I don't mean to fuss, and I don't want to preach, but I don't understand, man. What God says to me is very clear. Chapter 45 and verse 21. And there is no God else besides me, a just God and a Savior. There is none beside me. Now God is telling you that over and over and over and over. Now I'm not an idiot. When God tells me that many times, I'm not going to let anyone trick me. I'm not going to let the devil trick me. Now the fact that you want to believe in a man is nothing new about that. You go back to the Bible. Let's go back to Samuel with the Jewish people. After all the miracles and stuff that God's given, the Jewish people come to Samuel. Now God's protecting them. Now this sounds slap crazy to me. Hopefully it will to you. The people come to Samuel and say, we want a king like everybody else has got. And Samuel gets mad at them. He says, God's your king. And you're God. And they, no, we want somebody we can see. One of us. Just like everybody else has got. So Samuel goes to God and says, God, they have betrayed me. Now notice what God tells Samuel. He says, no, Samuel. They have not betrayed you. They have betrayed me. He said, give it to them. And he said, this is the curse that will be upon them. He said, they will be taxed. Their children will have to go to war for him. The best of your crops will be given to him. Of your sheep, of anything that you got, will be given to him. And you will be taxed. And it will get worse and worse to the point that man will scream out for God to take this burden off of them. Now the taxation has reached that point now to the people of the world. And this is all about what I told you. Done in 1913, Thomas Jefferson warned you, don't let it happen. Now God's going to turn it around. These people are going to be beat.